Hello, comic book fans. Today we're talking about Street Knights issue 1 by GodHood Comics, the same company that created the Antagonist series. And I was very intrigued by this just by visually the characters on the cover looked cool and it looked up my style, especially as a Power Rangers fan. Now, I didn't know I was walking into what this story will offer me. And as the story starts, it tells a story about these twin brother cosmic beings and how one, pretty much fell to the dark side of his power and wanting to control everything, and how he wanted pretty much to be the center of the universe. And his twin brother, was not down for that at all. And it turned into a battle, and specifically he released these dragons, right? These cosmic dragon beings that he would use as his weapons of mass destruction. And we even see this part in the story where he pleads with his brother to come with him to rule over everything. And his brother's like, no, screw you, like, you've gone insane, you gotta get up out of here. So his brother locked in as like the last cosmic being of these people, and he imprisoned his brother, and he used those cosmic dragons and made it to where people or other beings would have to wield them, right? Like he made to where they cannot just act on their own, or somebody can take advantage of them. These cosmic dragon beings of these powers would have to find somebody worthy of their power. And we see that later in the story that he specifically makes it to where like an evil person can't control this anymore, obviously, right? So he locked in and did his part before his time was done. And here's we get a look in on our first character, and the characters in the story, what it will be surrounded by. And we get this nightmare, this nightmare scenario where this girl's being choked, and this cosmic being is talking to her, like pretty much roasting her at this point. But then we see one of the dragons themselves, and clearly this is like a vision or warning of what is to come. And unfortunately, for the time being, that's all it is, because then she is woken up back into reality, which we see it is a very interesting, messed up situation, especially waking up from a dream like that, right? Because it looks like she was like just in her dream, she was chosen, and then she was burned, right, by the dragon itself. It was very cool and interesting concept, right, for that particular dream itself. But we see that her father's a drunk, and he's telling her to find her brother because her brother is out missing somewhere, and to bring him back home or whatever. And we see that she's grown up in a very abusive household, and we get a glimpse of that. And then we get this other glimpse, panning away back into space, that these cosmic dragon beings, right, their aura itself is traveling across the galaxy. So they're giving us this back and forth. The story is providing us what is going on within the moment itself. And now, one thing I will say is that some characters are written better than others, and the overall writing itself, I would say, takes a small downfall when it comes to particular word choices, right? Like, I couldn't help myself, right? I was reading this particularly with the boy in the situation, and I'm like, a white person had to write this, right? And like, just the particular word choices and everything, it just did not fit right into said story, said character, right? It felt at times very forced when using certain terminologies and certain the lingo of said place, trying to use the lingo of either said time period or said state you grew up in, etc. The upside to this is that this story, you can tell that it is a comic, but it uses certain details from like classic cartoons. Like if you grew up in the early 2000s, this feels, especially with the art style, it definitely feels like early 2000s cartoons. And I would say a splice, just a little bit of manga, right? With the with the characteristics of the expressions of the characters and how they interact, and how their faces contort when something happens. It's a blend between early classic 2000 cartoons and a little bit of manga and anime in that, in my humble opinion. Just looking at this, and it does do a good job with its charisma, right? And I use charisma. What I mean by that is, as we see this story, and as it's going along, and they're trying to fight these thugs off, and you see this, the charisma. What I mean is, it's not a very bland story, right? It's not scared to do something goofy, right? In a very intense situation. It doesn't break you away from the story. It's just a very funny thing, like when she picked the boy up and took off, and how she did it. It's very the story, it's not afraid to kind of expand. It's not afraid, it's kind of aware that the world it is in, and it's taking advantage of that, right? This is a comic book, and it's taking advantage of that, and it's not afraid to do something goofy. And when you see this old man that comes and save these kids from being hurt. And now, if you are a manga anime fan, if you do read that, as soon as this old man pops up, your head goes to directly to that. And you can tell the inspirations that this story takes, and you could tell the time period that this story and these characters are in, right? And where the inspirations take place. Now, another thing I will add is that we see this other character named Sarah, right? And she has like this gothic phase, and she wants to draw mangas, and her parents are going back and forth with her, right? It's very the classic style of, you're going to go to school, you're going to become a doctor, stop this, etc. And even gets to the point her father destroys her her book with all her ideas and concepts in it. I wish we had a little bit more time and dove into that, because even though they are pretty much being jerks about this situation, I felt like we should have had a little bit more time with the back and forth between the kids and the parents, between Sarah and her parents in that scenario. Because yes, she wants to do this and they want her to do that. I feel like we should have a little more time to see where that goes and how that plays out, and how that will escalate her character in the story. Because I find that's a very interesting concept that they was working with. And the story is showing us all these characters, right? Like if you get this book, just realize you're not focusing on one or two characters. You're focusing on an entire band of characters. And this story, it's doing its best to give each character, to show you and to give you an idea of each character. And we're introduced to these other characters, which at a soccer game, and he loses, and it's a boyfriend girlfriend thing, right? It's those particular two characters are working on. And even in this, these few panels we get with these characters, it does a good job of being goofy, being funny, right? And the banter back and forth isn't bad either. What I will say is the particular dialogue, it just in certain aspects I feel like could have been tweaked. between the characters. Overall, I don't think it was, entirely that bad at all. And as we pay attention to the story, we're back with the original two characters, and she's still looking for her brother. She hasn't found him yet. And they're at the sushi shop, and it's still nighttime, and everybody's eating, but all these other characters and people are going to show up, and we see that with the original thugs from earlier in the story. He comes back with reinforcements to go after the old man and the kids, right? And so now it's pretty much like an entirely gang situation going on here. But because all of this happened in one day, everybody shows up at the exact same spot. One thing that's completely unrealistic, and I would not stand for in this story, there was no way in hell a gothic white girl and her butler would stay and try to help. I don't care who she knew that was there. He's getting her the heck out of there because of who her parents are, and because, to put it in the most blatantly terms, this is just a bunch of niggas. He would have got her up out of there. They're the only white people there, I'm sorry. They would have got the heck up out of there with the quickness. I feel like it would have made more sense if the gothic girl went there by herself. If Sarah went there by herself and she was friends with the black chick, right? If she was friends with the black chick, if they knew each other from school or something like that, and they was already tight, that would have made it more sense for her to be there and want to fight along with her. And in this story, while everybody was fighting, the old man gets shot and he's dying, and the dragon spirit finds all these kids, and it just hits them, and it creates like these suits around them, right? And it just so luckily it happens to be this bunch of kids that happens to, and it happens right in front of the gangsters and the thugs. So it's like they know who they are, but they're there, and now the tides have turned and they're getting their butt kicked. Now in the story, this happens like in one panel or two, and it's very quick, so you don't get much time at all in this story to see these characters be superheroes, to actually see them grasp the concept of what just happened here. This story was very much a build-up story to try to get you invested in these characters way before anything heroic or superhero happens. And as the story closes, we see that, I believe you pronounce the name Jorok or Jorok, whatever, the cosmic god that wanted to take over everything, that he's actually still alive, and they're going to dispatch, as you can see, these other beings, right? These cosmic thugs, these cosmic, intergalactic level beings, and descend them upon Earth to go after these kids. And then we see them sitting down just chilling or whatever, and then we see them become heroes again. We don't get enough time with these characters, in my opinion, because most of them don't know each other. I feel like this story could have been a lot longer, in my opinion, and there's a lot of things I would have tweaked. But overall, that's my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching this video. Like, share, and subscribe for more, and thank you for watching.